After seeing how many people watched my How to Protest video, I wanted to do a very quick and dirty and real follow-up to talk about what people can do who want to engage in movement spaces, want to engage in moments of social unrest eruption, but cannot protest. And this is really important because there are so many different modes of organizing. And there's a quote that I think was from like a Crime Think poster or something that I've loved for like the past 10 years, and it says the real anarchists do the dishes. The real anarchists do the dishes. They do the dishes. Come on. It's not always the flashy stuff. It's not always the revolutionary stuff that ends up on the TV or in the history books that's really important. A part of why I love reading and learning about radical history is that once you dig past the spectacle, the revolutionary suicide, and the shirtless photos of Huey Newton, maybe that's just me, I just paid attention to the shirtless photos of Huey Newton, there is a very tangible and real practice in organizing spaces of people taking care of each other, of people scouting, finding information that's relevant to movements, of doing the community care and defense that has been so world-giving and has uplifted marginalized communities and disenfranchised people for centuries, meaning women, domestic laborers, folks that take care of the community, the kids. And organizing in radical spaces, childcare is so endlessly important. And so when we reduce our ability to be political to either voting or attending a protest, there is a lot that can be missing, a lot that people hunger for. Ever since I've been radicalized and practicing how to engage in movement spaces, I feel the most grounded and fulfilled when I'm in community with people, when we're meeting each other's needs, when we're experimenting and brainstorming about the ways that we want to live alongside each other politically. How can we live more full and in-depth political lives outside of the hellscape of a political life that we're given by a fucked up system like capitalism or imperialism, or for someone like me, US society? And it's important to first start by saying there's a lot of different reasons why folks might not want to protest or do not want to protest. You have different levels of ability. There are folks with chronic illnesses, different immigration statuses, folks that have responsibilities like families or people that they are taking care of back home, safety concerns, mental health. If you went through a period of struggling through all sorts of depressive episodes and other things related to your mental health, is going to a protest where there's going to be a lot of state violence the best thing? It depends on your context, but it's important to acknowledge that. And other caretaking responsibilities. There are so many other reasons as well why not going to a protest makes sense. Maybe you're an organizer and you need to take a break from the frontline shit because things are getting too hot or you've been doxxed or whatever may be. There are all kinds of other ways to tap in, and it could be because surveillance is making you feel unsafe. There's this whole area of the left that sometimes crops up. It's like what I call manarchists, and it's people that are just super into the frontline stuff. They'll travel to other countries and go to actions and movements and moments. And this isn't to say that there is sheer material tactical knowledge that we should all be building in terms of how we want to respond to the state. But there are different areas and arenas in terms of how we can take care of each other and show up and respond. And so this video is going to be helpful for folks that maybe struggle to show up to the mass mobilization situations. There's a lot of different reasons why, and we're going to talk through some things that might be helpful. So send this to your friends or people that you know that might need to hear this. I'm going to list a bunch of different ways that people can engage outside of the protest. First is a video that I filmed for this channel, and it's mutual aid. Think of mutual aid as a potluck where everyone brings something to share, compared to charity, which is like a banquet where only a few people decide who gets served. Mutual aid is also about a more democratized form of collective care and aid work that is being done, as opposed to one that is top-down and hierarchical. Mutual aid is not a new concept. It's deeply rooted in indigenous cultures and societies worldwide. Many indigenous cultures have alternative forms of economy or sharing space or resources. There are so many different modes of mutual aid. And this is really important because I think over the last like 5 to 10 years, mutual aid has been under attack on certain levels by the state, in terms of especially the Stop Cop City movement. But it's also become increasingly necessary post-2020 for people to engage in mutual aid, to understand the ways that we can take care of each other during and post state collapse? What are the ways that we can take care of the undocumented people around us? What are the ways that we can work towards taking care of the houseless folks around us? And taking care isn't meaning like, I'm here to help you and you have to receive the help in the way that I need. It's about providing resources and tools and things that both allow us to be in community with each other and also enable us to make each other's lives better. And some actionable steps that you can take if you're interested in mutual aid are join or start a neighborhood pod or tenant union. Are there issues around housing or housing insecurity in your local neighborhood or environment? Do you have a shitty landlord? Can you coordinate with your neighbors and the people that live in your building and figure out how you can meet your needs? Are there certain people that might need groceries? Are there certain people who have messed up utilities? Are there certain issues in certain units in your building? Can people collectivize their information and labor in order to help each other out? Their idea is offer weekly check-ins for those at risk. So are there people in your community that you can actively try to play and be in a support role for? Maybe someone who was recently incarcerated. Maybe it's someone who's going through a mental health crisis. Maybe it's someone that has been kicked out of their housing for whatever reason. Another way that you can practice mutual aid is coordinating rides, childcare, and emergency housing, whether it be in organizing and protest situations, or if it's just like in normal life in your community, living with each other kind of situations. Another thing that I really love is I feel like this was a big thing in like the New York of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but rent parties. So throwing parties, charging a cover at the door, and pooling funds, and then figuring out who in your community is in need or needs to cover bills or maybe has recently lost work. And this can be another way of people sharing space, building community, and also collectivizing resources and helping the people around you gain a certain kind of stability to make this deeper kind of political life more tangible and necessary. Another idea is to raise bail funds, do eviction defense, or host healing spaces. I did a lot of legal support and jail support last year when there was a lot of pro-Palestine movement stuff happening in my region, and I learned a lot about jail support, legal support. Um, I think the thing that mutual aid really brings it back to for me is that it's both politicizing work, it's work that's tangible and is invested in helping people with a confrontation of the systemic things that cause people to be disenfranchised, cause people to be disgruntled or downgraded by capitalism. And mutual aid really begs the question of like, what would it mean if I offered collective care in a space where I don't place myself in a hierarchy above other people? So this, to me, mutual aid requires talking to people, knowing your community, checking in with people's needs, temp checking on whether or not the modes of care that are being provided are useful, and the emotional side of organizing and looking after people and taking care of them is literally just as important, because if I think about how much excess we have in this country and how much could be possible if we begin to like scrape more from the excess and give it to those who actually could find some utility in it, mutual aid makes a lot of sense. Another way that you can help in social movement and justice spaces, if you don't want to protest, is scouting. And this is kind of in the category of ways to engage in activism that are kind of pre-action kind of possibilities. And there are definitely plenty more non-protest roles like scouting that could be useful. But in particular, scouting matters because it's typically being able to check a location for certain kind of things that might be good to know for an action. What are the entrances, the exits? Is it private property? Is it accessible? Um, is it close to a police station? Is it in an area where whatever action might be happening is going to get a lot of attention? Is it isolated? What kind of cameras are there? What kind of security systems are there? These are all vital, legitimate questions that come up when people are planning actions. And if you aren't going to be at the action, there are ways to help with scouting that can be really like low risk in terms of your arrestability, and it can allow you to engage as deeply as you might need to. It can provide an early warning system. Scouts can track police or counter-protester movements and communicate this in real time, giving direct action groups time to adjust or disperse safely. Another reason that scouters really matter is that there is route planning and adaptation. So before and during actions, scouts can assess and reroute crowds, from kettles, blockades, surveillance heavy areas, and then also information relay. So scouts pass on essential intel, like where medics are needed, where arrestees are being taken, and when crowd control weapons are being deployed. So these are kind of like the ways that scouts can help if you like want to be in an action, but you want to take a less risky role. But I'm more thinking of scouts in terms of like, let's say there's a direct action that's targeting a certain kind of facility or building and you need actual intel. Have there been other actions at that spot in the past? Is there information about those actions that could be useful? And scouting requires a certain kind of intelligence. Maybe you're a scout for a particular thing because you are from that region or area or neighborhood and you have a better sense of how things can be scouted. Or maybe you are of a certain identity, so you can go into a particular location and not set off certain alarms. And I'm thinking of the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, which were a group of folks in the 60s that broke into a FBI office somewhere along the East Coast, and they were able to find various documents that helped much of the public alongside other initiatives to figure out that COINTELPRO happened. And so in that scenario, they needed to scout the office, they needed to know what kind of locks were there, whether or not there were cameras.
At that time, I was driving a cab part-time, so my hours were really flexible. So we did a lot of casing. We would usually case in man-woman pairs. That way, in case the cops thought the vehicle was suspicious or whatever, we could pretend that we were a couple.
You can't imagine anything more boring than casing. But I had a terrible crush on Bonnie, so that made it much more interesting than if I'd been in the van with Keith.
We had to find out if there were electronic alarms. In other words, we had to get inside.
I was 29 at the time, but I was told all the time that I still looked like a kid. And so I was to become a Swarthmore student and make an appointment to interview the head of the office about opportunities for women in the FBI.
So you said it was Brenda?
Brenda.
Brenda,
Yes,
pleasure to
thank
meet you. This is Tom Lewis.
Hi, how are you? I'm Brenda.
Hi, Tom Lewis. Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Brenda.
meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me.
I'm making a lot of small talk at that point, trying to get him to relax, and actually I think he felt a little flattered. And he gave me about a half an hour of time, and he explained that opportunities were opening up for women in the FBI. I had to take notes with these glasses on that were really only for distance, so I couldn't really see what I was writing very well in my notebook.
Do you mind if I have a copy of the application?
He went to the cabinet, and I watched to see, what the interior of the cabinet was like. It was full of file folders, and those were the things that we were going to be taking out.
And there's a really good documentary that I'll try to tag below, but scouting is so necessary. I mean, there's been times in the past where I've been helping with campaigns where it's in a much more conservative area and you're trying to talk to people that have more conservative jobs and maybe you know the bar that they work at and you go to the bar and you're dressed up in camo and a camo hat. And it's basically like sometimes scouting is like role playing or like acting, which I have found kind of fucking fun in the past. Did that particular scenario that I'm thinking of like work out or did I actually get the information I needed? And it was a fun time. It was a fun time. Was I the most effective scout in that situation? No. But it was because that was kind of my role in the situation. So think about scouting. I will really stand by this, and I've mentioned it in videos numerous times. Communal dinners, hosting meals for people, sharing space with people. I mention this especially because in college, it was kind of one of the first modes of people sharing political space outside of like an organizing meeting or showing up to a protest that I'd really seen. And my senior year, I remember I had two particular friends that were together at the time, and they would host communal dinners at their house, and they would invite international students that they knew through different things to hang out, talk, have conversations. Some people worked at restaurants in our college town, so they would bring leftovers from their job. Other people cooked side dishes and brought them. Other people brought juices or sodas or beverages. And This is so clear and useful to me because there's so many different reasons that communal dinners can be great for organizing spaces and non-protest kind of things. It can be great ways for people to build trust with each other, to learn from each other, to figure out how you engage in talking about politics. It can also be a good way for people. Maybe someone had a rough week and that's a space for them to check in. Maybe some folks are food insecure. And so going to that communal dinner and being able to eat and maybe leave with leftovers can be extremely useful. When I was a senior, it was a great space for people that were more left and felt kind of disgruntled by the more centrist politics on our campus. We could hang out with each other and talk shit and complain and assess and strategize and really lean on each other. Because I do think with organizing and social justice, there can be this careful line between devoting so much time to meetings and organizing and the things that seem politically productive versus sharing space with people, laughing, eating food, finding those moments of care, finding those moments of fun. And you can adjust your communal dinners tonally to what you and your community needs. Maybe it's a weekly dinner where you start by making food with 3 or 4 of your friends, and then you each invite a different person every week. Maybe you're a crew and you want to find ways to bring in newer people and have it be a chill social space that you can kind of just temp check people, see what they're about, see what their politics are, and really kind of use it as a tool for vouching, but not in like a weird way. And I think it can also just be really good to be in the practice of hosting people, holding space. Because I do think communal dinners can be really a really great mode of care. And then I think also during times where there's a lot of things happening, there's a lot of intensity, repression, whatever, sharing food, giving food to people, holding space, checking in with people, it can be extremely useful in those settings as well, like a way to check in. Have a regular potluck or communal meal for your friends or local organizers. Maybe do different weeks where it's different themes for what kind of food you're going to make, or maybe you switch off the houses or the days of the week that it is. Maybe it's a brunch instead of a dinner. You can offer a home or a communal space as a meeting spot, rest area, or art build hub. So you can combine your communal dinner with other kind of things. Maybe you do a communal dinner before an action and people can make art and check in and have no phones conversations. And it can be a really good way to just get on the same page. I really stand by this. It's like, and if you do them long enough, it can really be a tried and true way for people to find joy in their week, to take a break from the stress of organizing, and to really show up and be taken care of. Because there have been times in my life where I was going through it in terms of what was happening politically, National Guards in my city, all this other shit. And then you realize, oh, it's Wednesday, there's a communal dinner. And then you show up and people are laughing and someone's playing Mario Kart and someone else is out back smoking a joint. And they're like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in like 2 weeks. Like, how have things been? And you're like, oh, or girl, I got to catch you up. Do a communal dinner. And next on my list is media work and propaganda. Since the beginning of this second Trump presidency, I've been having a lot of different conversations with friends about the news and how we process. And I found that my friends that are closer or more meshed with organizing spaces and do mutual aid and do different kinds of grassroots and community organizing work, those folks tend to engage in politics all the time and have friends and spaces and people that make those conversations fruitful. But I found that a lot of my friends that don't, they struggle with where to put their energy. And I'll say for me, as someone that started as an organizer around 2015, got into writing, got into journalism and radical writing and essays. And then I have moved around, and then in certain cities, I'm writing more. In other cities, I'm organizing more. When I'm not actively organizing or I'm not an organizer in an organization, there are other ways that I am political in my life. Media work helps me both synthesize my ideas and thoughts around what's happening in the world around me. And I never make any of this as like, I'm right and this is the only way. I'm like, I'm exploring my perspective and different ideas and ways of looking at the world. And honestly, for me, it's useful because I'm trying to make things that I would like to see out there. I'm trying to make things that 19 or 17-year-old or 15-year-old or 20-year-old me would have loved. I'm trying to make things that feel like they center me and help me really hone in on the questions, the fears, the thoughts that I have around the systems we're living under and the fuckery of whatever is happening right now. Media work can look like a lot of different things. I don't think anyone should. It can be important to think about what are the topics or issues facing people in your local context and environment. Are there ways that you can print off a bunch of zines or media about it? Can you wheat paste around your city or put up posters or flyers? Maybe you start a zine series and you find ways to distribute that to folks in your community that are interested in that. Maybe you start a podcast. Maybe you start doing video essays. Maybe you create media for political organizations and other people. You help them with their comms. Maybe you get used to helping people train in media who are in organizing and movement spaces. All of these are things that I've done here or there in different ways. I mean, last year when I was doing legal support, I was talking to defendants and helping them prepare for media stuff that was maybe going to come up. We're over inundated and oversaturated online anyway. Why do I need to add anything else? But it really is far leftists. We're always going to need more media. We're always going to need more propaganda to counteract capitalism and imperialism and white supremacy and all this other fuckery. And so how can you approach what media would look like to you? And what kind of things would you like to see in the media space? Start or contribute to a zine, a blog, or a podcast. This is kind of teetering into the careful line of like, it's online activism. Posting graphics ain't activism or whatever. And this is all, you can be passionate in one of these areas or an area that is outside of protest and might not even be in this video. But I think all of these things can be modes of behavior that we use and do alongside other things. So yeah, maybe you're passionate about media and that's your lane and you found it, but I don't think that means it's the only way to engage. And I also don't think that doing media work and online propaganda is like beholden to itself, and it means that it's not like useful or anything. There's utility to so many different things. And I'll just say this, like doing this YouTube and doing my podcast, I really have realized over the last year, 2 years, one, I know I have a perspective that is unique to my life experiences, being Black, being queer, being from an immigrant family, fucking growing up in the way that I did, going to a college, being radicalized in these underlying senses, and then coming to an overt sense of my politics over time. When I was getting into radicalism, I was always kind of hungering for things that reflected the way I wanted to show up in the world or who I wanted to be. It's why in college I got into beatnik literature and got obsessed with On the Road and worked on the West Coast for 3 summers and figured out, oh yeah, there's a lot of snowbirds out here that are racist. Like I think about what I was searching for on a radicalism level or a personal autonomy level through beatnikian literature. I mention that because that's how powerful art and media is. It can compel people to move across the country or quit their jobs or change their lives. And I think when we put care into expressing and exploring our political ideas, it's not only a gift to ourselves, it can be a gift to other people. It can be something that can ground people in moments of utter chaos and stress and horror. It can be a way to explain the basics of the radical histories of your cultural background. And it could also be a way to bring people comfort, to let them know they're not alone, and to inspire people to think of the ways that they want to show up and the stories that they want to tell too. It's interesting because I know as a writer, when I get back into writing more heavily, like this summer, I'm still invested in telling radical stories, no matter what kind of media or story I'm telling. The source is there, and you can find different ways to express the source, which maybe is a good note to end this video on. I think it's really important for people engaging in politics, learning online, trying to figure out what to do. There is so much online discourse. There is so much rage farming and whatever the fuck. And what matters is that you look at your life and figure out the small and large ways that you can step in, help, show up. Maybe you do go to an action camp or a movement space and you do childcare. I did that when I was in Standing Rock. My first time in Standing Rock, I was there for a week and a half, and I did childcare for a full week. I had little kids chasing me with hatchets and one little white girl that wouldn't leave me alone, and she loved me, and I was just like, well, I'm here. And that was extremely useful because it was a camp with thousands of people, and childcare was needed for other people to do their responsibilities and roles in the way that the movement needed or the way those people wanted to. In other movement spaces, I've just helped in the kitchen. You help cook meals, you help do the dishes, You help do cleanup. Cleaning up in radical spaces is really important. Being the person that there's just so many ways to engage. And I really do come back to the fact that we deserve to have political lives outside of just social unrest and state-sanctioned methods of participating. Maybe leave some ideas in the comments of other ways that you know of or you've seen other people engage in social justice spaces, in movement spaces to fight for liberation, but it isn't necessarily the frontline shit. And I really want to ground people that we need to have a diversity of tactics, turn away from manarchism. There's a lot of romanticism of frontline stuff. There's also a lot of trauma, and the community care, the self-care, the collective care work is really what grounds us in the in-between times before the next horrific thing happens that we're gonna have some mass unrest about. So I hope this video helps folks that are feeling confused or conflicted and want some ideas of other ways to show up. And I'll be sure to add a bunch of resources in the description here. And to learn more, check out my Patreon. I'll put plenty of resources there and also some other zines and other things with ideas that we'll add onto this video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
If you like the work I'm doing on this channel, consider supporting me on Patreon. Patrons get early access to my videos, a free monthly newsletter. Your support helps me keep making radical content outside of the algorithm's grip. Join the Patreon community at the link in my description.